Welcome to Detroit. Doesn't matter if you have one ass cheek and 3 toes. I will beat your ass. You can drown them. And that's what we gotta be. That's who we have to be. Because that's our domain. That is our domain. Because we'll tread water as long as it takes to fucking bury you.
Takes the snap, turns, gives to Montgomery, right side, end zone, touchdown, Detroit Lions! Yes.
We are driven by Detroit.
Hello, Detroit Lions friends, fans, and family members. Welcome on back to yet another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. I'm your host, David T. Pike, and as always, we're diving on in. So folks, when it comes to the Detroit Lions, obviously there are certain storylines, there are certain things that obviously a lot of fans are paying attention to. One of the things that a lot of fans are paying attention to is the backup quarterback position, is the backup quarterback situation. And as it stands right now, there is both good news and there's both bad news when it comes to this situation. We're going to talk about both a little bit in this episode, but I'm also planning on releasing another episode that specifically deals with just the good news, but also some bad news also today as well. But this one's going to be more bad than good, so I'm just trying to give you guys a layout of what we're dealing with here. Now, what exactly am I going to talk about in this episode? What I'm going to talk about is there was a tweet that came out yesterday in regards to yesterday's, evening practice that the Lions had, which they do one every year as far as, in the training camp period. And this tweet, if I recall correctly, came from a guy by the name of Colton. He works for The Athletic. And I'm going to put the tweet up there, but what you're going to notice is that within the tweet, it specifically states that Hendon Hooker was the quarterback, and during the play that this guy is referring to, Hendon Hooker waited to pull the trigger to throw a ball, which then, Hendon Hooker threw the pass, got it to Sam Laporta, which don't know if Laporta was able to squeeze it, bring it down, whatever, but it was in the end zone. But it was the part at the end of the tweet that specifically got my attention about how because Sam Laporta was in the end zone and because Hendon Hooker waited so long to actually throw the ball, it wound up with Sam Laporta getting hit hard by the linebacker Stewart, whereas, according to Colton, had, Hendon Hooker thrown the ball when he saw him coming open, probably could have avoided it. Now, that last part I'm inferring a little bit. But the point of the matter is that there is a lot going on within that one little tweet that is a bit of a problem. In fact, it's a huge problem. Because what that tweet specifically is showing me is that there are still problems with Hendon Hooker's development, and that these problems are very glaring, and that these issues, after everything that's been going on with, the Lions trying to get him further involved in, understanding the offense, trying to further his development along, all this stuff that we're talking about, it continues to tell me that, there's a massive issue here as far as with Hooker's development. And I literally looked at that tweet last night for about a good 20 some odd minutes, and there are about 5 or so things just from that one tweet that I was able to notify myself and, notice and say, okay, we've got a problem here. There is a big issue here. And so I wanted to talk about it here really quickly. The first issue that I have with what I read in this tweet is that the basic dynamic of what it sounds like that's going on here within the tweet as far as what happened during the play is that this almost sounds like what most people know in the NFL or fans know as a hospital pass, which these are the types of passes that wide receivers absolutely hate. And it becomes an absolutely, on top of that, horrible reputation for a quarterback to have. Because what a hospital pass is, it's where a quarterback is going to put the receiver in a position where they're in essence defenseless to try and, absorb a hit after, the ball gets to them. And what happens is that this type of a pass puts the receiver in a huge risk, a huge position to wind up getting seriously hurt. And the reason why these types of passes not only are bad for the receiver, other than the fact of the physical implication, is that it starts to erode trust with the quarterback and the wide receiver, because now the wide receiver, when he realizes that quarterback is in, he's going to start thinking, okay, rather than just catching the ball and running, having that implicit trust that the quarterback is putting me in a good position, I've now got to start wondering, okay, is there somebody that is about to ring my bell as soon as I catch this ball, or as soon as I get in a position to catch this ball? And the reason why this is a massive problem is because I would say in most cases, not all, but in most cases, the only reason that this happens is because the quarterback is not quicker in recognizing the defense, or maybe they recognize the defense, but rather than throwing the ball right away, squeezing the trigger, they hold on to that ball for just a half a second longer than what they're supposed to. And like I said, this particular issue starts eroding the trust between wide receivers and quarterbacks, and it does so really damn quickly. Because again, the wide receiver, they're taught to make sure that they keep their eyes on the ball when the ball's coming to them. They're not supposed to be looking around to see, okay, who potentially is about to get, a good lick on me as far as trying to, send my ass to the hospital. They're supposed to implicitly trust that the quarterback is putting them in a position to make a play and then continue to run with the football. But if the first thing you're thinking about when the quarterback throws that ball to you is, okay, who in the hell is around me? How am I about to get hit here? The last thing you're thinking about is how to catch the pass. And what that does is, like I said, it erodes trust with the receivers and quarterbacks, but at the same time, it causes problems with offensive execution. So that's number one. Number two, again, the way that the tweet is set up, the way that the tweet was worded, is that Hooker, by the sounds of it, he waited rather than immediately firing to throw the pass, almost making it sound like that he had seen Sam Laporta, but rather than just his first initial reaction just be, hey, I see a guy open, I'm throwing the ball, he decided to wait a second, or wait a half a second, whatever the case might have been. This speaks to two problems on Hendon Hooker. Number one, it speaks to either his inability to recognize what he was seeing sooner, which again speaks to the fact of what Campbell has talked about, has highlighted during some media sessions on his ability to see things, his ability to recognize things, his ability to actually process what he's seeing at a quick speed, which, while Campbell has stated that there has been improvement in that, it still has a way to go. But it also highlights the inconsistency and how, because of the fact that he's not able to recognize that as quickly as he should, or being able to process that information as quickly as he should, it can cause harm to players. And it can cause harm in very serious ways. Because if he's not able to fully recognize what he's seeing, if he's not able to fully, pounce upon the opportunity that is there, whether it's, the coverage that he's seeing, or whether it's his ability to actually, hey, you know what? I see somebody's open. I got to fire this ball right now. What it does is it allows opportunities like, those very quick openings that happen in coverage. It's like, hey, you got to see what's happening, and you got to throw literally within milliseconds. Like, you cannot wait in some instances. You have to be able to recognize, maybe even in one sense, pre-recognize what you're about to do and just let it rip. And what it talks about here, as far as, Hendon Hooker waiting, it talks about his inability to understand that, and his inability, or rather, I would say another word would be his, I almost don't like using this word, but it's the only word I can think of right now off the top of my head, his timidness to actually squeeze the trigger when you see an opening and actually make sure you put the ball exactly where it needs to be, but at the same time ensure that the receiver is in the best possible position not only to make the catch, but to defend themselves. Not good. The third issue that I was able to think of as soon as I read that tweet was that the fact that Hooker's development has been as slow as it has is not only a poor sign on Hooker himself, especially considering, as I've said before, this is a guy that was in the NCAA for a number of years, was a starter, should have a lot of this stuff a lot further down than where he is, but it also puts a strain around all the others that are in the offense, not just the wide receivers. I already talked about how, these types of hospital passes put an immense strain on the trust between the quarterbacks and the wide receivers, but it also does it for everybody else. Because think about this. The offense is ran by the quarterback. And those that are in the unit, whether, it's the ones all the way down to the threes, whatever the case might be, they all rely on the quarterback to, make the decisions, put themselves in the proper positions to make those plays, and on top of that, they also trust the quarterback to be able to, hey, we know exactly what we can expect from this guy to make sure that we're doing our jobs correctly, because there's a reason why the quarterback is called the field general. He's supposed to make sure everybody's in the proper position. He's supposed to make sure that he's making smart decisions, so that way, hey, you know what? We can move forward with this play and everybody's on the same page. But the problem is that if Hooker is having so many issues, not either, not being able to understand what he's seeing in front of him, or being able to make that decision as soon as it becomes available, what happens is it leads to opportunities and it leads to things being, missed out. Or if he actually does miss it and then decides to say, oh, well, maybe I can make up for it by actually squeezing it into a window that's not necessarily that smart of a decision, now it leads to mistakes. It leads to turnovers. And this report also, as I said, it gives a rather unpleasant image of people potentially getting hurt. Because let me tell you this right now. You want to know what made this whole situation even 100% worse? Is if, okay, yeah, you know what? Everything happened exactly as the report came out from that tweet. But then all of a sudden we found out that Sam Laporta got hurt and had to walk off the field because of the fact that, Hendon Hooker delayed in actually getting the ball out. That would have made that whole situation 100% worse. So again, there's a lot of things that are going on within just that one singular tweet. And there's still even more things to talk about. Again, as a former quarterback, as soon as I read that tweet, I'm like, oh, there is a hell of a lot of information here to uncover. There's a hell of a lot of information to unpack and to understand. Because the next issue that I have from this tweet is that you got to think about this. As Hendon Hooker is the guy that is directly fighting to be Goff's backup, the fact that Hooker has spent the last 2 years behind Goff and has in essence not learned this trait from Goff, that's kind of disturbing. The reason I say that is because what's one thing Goff is known for when it comes to his wide receivers and as a quarterback in the NFL? One, he's one of the most accurate passers in the NFL. But on top of that, he is one of the most friendliest quarterbacks to wide receivers by not putting them at risk for injury with dangerous passes unless he absolutely has no other choice or the situation requires it. And what exactly do I mean by that? What I mean by that is that no other option exists except for a tight throw that has to be made. And typically you're going to see that on positions like where, it's like third down, fourth down, it's a gotta-have-it moment. It's like, hey, because of the situation, maybe I wouldn't normally make this throw, but I have to because it's the only option I've got. Or it's like, hey, you know what? We're in the red zone or we're going into the red zone. You got to have it. You're going to put the wide receiver in a position that maybe is not the best one, but it's, again, the best option that I have. And again, no word was given during this little tidbit of a tweet that showed what down or distance it was. All we know is that, hey, you know what? The Lions offense was in the red zone. They were going into the end zone. But the point is that it's practice. Above all else, you should want to make sure, you should want to ensure that your fellow teammates are safe during these types of throws. Because again, it's practice. It's not a game. It's like, listen, yeah, you're trying to get better. You're trying to improve upon things that are happening in practice. But you do not want to do it at the risk of losing players, especially Sam Laporta. And so if you're forcing these dangerous throws, and, it's because of the fact that you're not able to read what you need to read as fast as you should, you really need to kind of check yourself. Especially because of the fact that, hey, again, you're fighting for the number 2 quarterback job. And so far, you're not exactly showing a whole lot of good here. And this report only heightens that. And again, it goes back to what I've talked about with Jared Goff before. Jared Goff is not only one of the most accurate passers in the NFL, he's one of the fastest and smartest processors in the NFL. Goff would have definitely recognized what he was seeing way quicker than Hooker would have. And chances are, if it had been Goff that had made the throw, we would not have heard anything about how, Sam Laporta got absolutely destroyed at the end of the play because of the fact that, Goff simply didn't recognize what he was seeing, held on for the ball too long, and then it wound up, with his receiver absolutely getting his ass handed to him on the end of the, freaking throw. So again, the fact that Hooker has not been able to learn this trait from Goff, not been able to implement it, again, it speaks to the fact that Hooker is not developing, he's not learning, quite frankly at this point, as fast as he should, but also that he's probably not retaining things. And again, that's not good. Now, the next thing and the final thing here to talk about is that we have to go back to when Hooker was initially drafted. When Hooker was drafted, there were a lot of expectations that there were not only one put on him by the fans, a lot of them were incorrect, but there was also the expectations of the organization, the coaching staff, and that was, hey, you know what? They're drafting him to be a project player to become the Lions' long-term backup quarterback. Again, I said that from the very beginning. Got quite a lot of hate from it, for, that thought process from Lions fans, because there were quite a few out there that thought he was going to become the franchise quarterback at some point. But at this point, as I said back then, no way that was ever going to happen. But the problem is that this is now the third time that we have gone through this rodeo, we have gone through this diamond dance, where Hooker is trying to show that he deserves, that he has earned to become the Lions' number 2 quarterback. But the problem is that Hooker has not really actually definitively beaten anybody out. Either one that, showed that, he actually deserved the job hand over, foot the other person. But also the only person that he has beaten out wasn't exactly a major accomplishment. Because think about this. He couldn't beat out Teddy Bridgewater when he came out of retirement last year. He couldn't beat out Teddy Bridgewater when he came into camp just before either, camp was about to end or was about halfway through camp back in 2023. And then on top of that, like I said, the only person that he has actually beaten in terms of winning the number 2 quarterback job was actually Nate Sudfeld. That's it. That's the only person he's really actually been able to quote-unquote beat. And let's call it for what it is. Nate Sudfeld is not anybody that is going to be like, oh, wow, you beat out Nate Sudfeld? That's not a major accomplishment. Let's call it for what it is. Nate Sudfeld, at best, is a third-string level quarterback. If you realistically want to think about it, Kyle Allen in camp is closer to Teddy Bridgewater in terms of talent. I'm not saying he is, but he's definitely a closer, actual, representation of that because, well, again, Kyle Allen has started multiple games in the NFL. He has been a starter for a team in the past. He has tons of experience, and he's been around in the NFL going from multiple teams, learning multiple offenses and roles. So it's like, again, the fact that we're at this point where, again, there is such a discrepancy, there's such a back and forth with the Lions trying to figure out who's going to be the number 2 quarterback, Despite the fact that Hooker has had, plenty of time under Goff, he's been, working with Teddy Bridgewater in the past, and yet it's still an up-in-the-air contest. It's still an up-in-the-air debate here. That's not good. And what it does is, again, it shows how the Lions do not have the full confidence in Hooker to take over that number 2 role definitively. And what it does is it puts a huge burden on the Lions to either roll with an erratic quarterback and an inconsistent quarterback at number 2, or again, face the real possibility that the project that they have tried to build in, Hendon Hooker to become their number 2 quarterback, it's dead in the water, and that they kind of need to move on. They need to find somebody else. Now, that's all the bad news. The good news about all this is that it came out late yesterday, shortly after Tim Twentyman had released his practice observations for, the evening practice, that because of Teddy Bridgewater's suspension from the high school that he was, working for, that he wants to make a comeback. He wants to return to the NFL. Well, the last time he did that, he came back to the Detroit Lions. So it's like, okay, here. The Lions are currently in a position where there's doubt, there's questions, and there's uncertainty as to what's going to happen with the backup quarterback position. You've now got a guy that has been your backup quarterback when he's been available for the last 2 years, and Teddy Bridgewater saying, hey, I want to come back again. Okay, let's call for what it is. Teddy Bridgewater is going to be the best option you're going to find, not only one this late going into the offseason, and again going into the preseason, but also number 2, Teddy Bridgewater already knows the offense. He knows the offense in terms of the players. He knows mostly what the offense is going to be because of the fact that Johnny Moe has already stated that the offense is not changing too terribly much. And again, he'll be able to slide right into that quarterback room, no problem. Now, the only slight problem that this is going to bring up is that there's no way in hell the Lions are going to carry 4 quarterbacks. Absolutely no way. So chances are, if the Lions were going to bring in Teddy Bridgewater, it would probably mean Kyle Allen's going to get cut. Because there's no way they're going to cut Hendon Hooker. It's just not going to happen. So that's about the only good news out of this whole situation that I can think of here. Is that, okay, you have a guy that you've had as your backup quarterback for the last 2 years. He's been a proven starter, has won, many games in the NFL, has been to the playoffs, was originally at one point a franchise quarterback for the Vikings. That's better than anything you're going to find out on the free market right now. Because I'm going to tell you this right now. If it's a decision between Teddy Bridgewater and Carson Wentz, I'm going Teddy Bridgewater all damn day. Every day, twice on Sunday, I'm not even thinking twice. So that's why I'm saying what I'm saying here is that, hey, what we're hearing about Hendon Hooker and what I was able to break down just from that one tweet, and I didn't even go to the damn practice, but I was able to break that all down just from one damn tweet. That right there tells me that the Lions should seriously consider bringing in Teddy Bridgewater. Otherwise, you're going to have to hope and pray like dear hell and heaven above that Hendon Hooker does not see the field, if at all. Because if he does, I'm sorry to say it, we might be seeing wide receivers going to the hospital because of the fact that, he still has not learned some of the most basic tenets of quarterback play. Just saying. But anyway, folks, I just had to talk about this because, like I said, as soon as I saw that tweet, my brain just absolutely went into overdrive as a former quarterback. I was just like, oh, hell no. Hell to the freaking no. We got to talk about this. But you guys do with this information what you will. Having said that, I'm going to end this episode and say thank you all for watching yet another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. If you like what you saw, by all means, highly encourage y'all to watch the next episode. Also encourage y'all, please, if you like the content, to subscribe to the channel. But if you just subscribed or you've subscribed in the past and you forgot to do so at the time, I want to also highly encourage y'all, please, make sure you hit that bell notification icon so you guys never miss any more content that I push out. Also, hope everybody out there has something in their life that makes them happy, makes them smile. God bless, my friends. And until the next time we meet, I'll see you all in the next episode.